So you've mentioned that you struggled with anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other things that we're focusing on in this edition of the newsletter is men's mental health.
Yeah.
With Men's Mental Health Awareness Week coming up
Yeah.
mid-June.
Yeah.
A lot of men find it difficult to reach out and ask for support.
Yeah.
And the statistics show that there's a much higher rate of suicide in men,
Mm-hmm.
partly because of this feeling like they can't access support.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you kind of experienced in terms of barriers that stopped you feeling like you could go to someone?
I would say professionally, no. The organisations are out there, so I think there is, and it's improving all the time. I think there is a stigma attached to it still. If you know where to go and who to ask, then there is a lot of support out there. I think part of the biggest problem for me was the reaction of other people around me. Some of it very positive, some of it quite the opposite. So for example, when I was at work towards the end of my time, my previous job, I used to overhear conversations from other people saying not particularly nice things about me. The classic, he needs to pull his socks up, man up, all that kind of stuff. So there are, in the truest sense of the word, it's just ignorance on people's part. I don't understand it, and they've no desire to find out. And it's that initial, you just need to, life's hard, you just need to get on with it. And if you can find a way to convince yourself that it's all right not to be all right, whether you're male or female, it doesn't make any difference. We're all humans. There is plenty of support out there, but it is what's the right expression? Just go look for it. Just go find it. And it's all over at the moment, isn't it? Talk. You've got to talk. And I do know. I've got to be careful how I word this, but I know a lot of men in particular who find it difficult to do that because they see it as a sign of weakness. And it isn't. I think it's the opposite. I think it's strength. I think if you admit that you're not coping and you talk to somebody about it, that's a really positive thing, because that's the first step to any kind of recovery. But there is still a stigma attached to it, I think, and I've experienced it myself, and still do sometimes. But I'm in a good enough place now to ignore that and know you don't know what you're talking about. It's real. I've been through it. But things are improving all the time, I think. Awareness is spreading a good
definitely
rate, a good rate.
I think there's still a lot of sort of stereotypes around men and how men are supposed to act, that they're supposed to be the strong ones, and that struggling with your mental health or crying or being upset is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, they still really do believe that. And that's what they're told from the people around them and from society, which makes it a lot harder for them to feel like they can tell someone that they are struggling.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because the people around them will see it as weak, or they're less of a man, things like that.
Well, I think I was quite lucky in that respect, in that certainly my dad, bless him, he was a talker. He was from being young. He always said, if you've got any problems, talk about it. So that was kind of part of my makeup anyway. But I know certainly a lot of my male friends didn't grow up with that kind of outlook on life. So do view it as, well, you're the man, you've got to, knuckle down and get on with it and stop being so soft. But as I say, I was lucky in that my dad was quite a softie in some respects, but in the best possible way. So that kind of made it, I came from a slightly better place, I think, than a lot of other people. But yeah, there is still, it's endemic, isn't it? There's a lot of people who think, you shouldn't be talking about it. You're the man, get on with it. But it's the battle's being fought. I think we're making some real progress in that. It's much higher profile than it used to be, so which I'm glad to say.
So what changes to see happening in terms of support for men and men being able to access services?
I think a lot of it is just knowing what's out there, isn't it? Because I do, like I said, there's a lot of, I know from my work with Touchstone, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of men's groups out there. Andy's Men Club. There's all sorts of stuff where men can, if they just want to get together and talk about the problems. I know about those services particularly through peer support. So I found out about those once I'd been through my own mental health problems. So I think, and I know it's being addressed, a big part of that issue is making men aware that those things are out there. And also re-educating an awful lot of people in that, it's all right for a man not to be all right, because we're all humans. But there's a lot of work going into it, isn't there? Just making things more accessible anyway. I think one of the things I would say is that, which applies, I think, to everybody, is that at a time when maybe you're not coping well, sometimes the last thing you have the capacity to do is to go and find out what's out there. If you're not in a good place, the last thing you want to do is go looking for stuff, because you don't have the desire just to get out of bed sometimes. So I don't have any answers to that one. How you access people who are going through it. I guess that just comes back to talking again, doesn't it? If you're suffering it, whether you're male or female, talk to somebody. And get, flag yourself up and saying, I need some help. And then access brilliant places like Touchstone who can point you in the right direction.
I think GPs are a good place to go when you first start to feel like you're struggling.
Yeah.
So perhaps trying to make GPs more aware of services that are available.
Yeah.
And just making them more widely known to people.
Yeah, that's true, actually, because that reminds me, when I first went to my GP, when he signed me off work, I'd actually found my way to Leeds Recovery College. Don't know if you've heard of it, but it's
yeah.
You have, but I'd never heard of it, and I can't remember. I think it must have been my therapist who pointed it out to me. And when I had one of my subsequent appointments with my GP, I mentioned it to him. I said, I'm thinking of going to Leeds Recovery College, and he didn't know what that was. So he was kind of, oh, really? I'll have to look into that, and made a note of it. Now, my GP was brilliant, I have to say, in lots of respects, but it was evident at that point that he didn't really know what was out there.
Yeah.
So, I think you're absolutely right there, kind of giving GPs, information about what is available, and immediately, pushing people to go and find things, I think would be a really positive step.
And I think as well, making it something that's shared in schools and colleges and universities.
Yeah.
There are a lot of groups that are 18 plus.
Yeah.
Which is understandable, because that's a very different sort of period of your life than it is if you're, say, 13, 14.
Yeah.
But I think if we made sure those groups were being mentioned and spoken about in colleges, universities, and people knew how to access them without necessarily having to go to someone and say, I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
I think sometimes being able to speak to someone and go to that group without anyone necessarily around you in your personal life knowing, until you feel more confident and more comfortable in saying you are struggling. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, and I've got a friend who, because I was a teacher once upon a time, I've got a friend who quit the profession like I did, and is now a trained therapist. And part of her role, and this is good news, part of her role is she goes into high schools and she does target students who are struggling. And she's told some of the stories she's told me, obviously not mentioning any names, but skirting over things, saying some people really struggling, certainly GCSE age and A level, because they're under such tremendous pressure, and giving them that outlet to sit down and talk confidentially. It's a really good thing. So I think you're right. Catch people early, educate them early when they're young, and then it becomes a natural part of your growing up process. So all right, I know it's okay not to be okay, and I know where to go to get help. So I think that's an excellent point.
I think in high school a lot of teenagers are worried because schools will share information with parents, and they may not have the most supportive parents or guardians at home.
Right.
And they worry that if they tell someone at school that they are struggling, that's going to go straight back home and they may get in trouble or it may be dismissed.
Yeah. Well, like I say, a lot of that is about the confidentiality, isn't it? It's the trust. It's like, I'm going to tell you stuff that I've never told anybody else, but I want it to stay with you, because to a certain, you don't want people to know, do you, that you're not coping, because you want to appear like you're strong and everything's fine. We all wear a mask to a certain extent, don't we? Anyway.
Yeah.
In
definitely.
our day-to-day lives.
But it's a very personal thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you're struggling with your mental health, if you're feeling quite anxious or depressed, that's not something you necessarily want everyone around you to know about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do think when I've had anxiety attacks and depression. It's because it's a mental thing. This sounds daft, but it's really obvious, because you can't put your finger on it. It's not like a wound or a broken leg. It's not something visible where you can go to the hospital and then fix it. I used to find myself thinking, well, I should be able to sort myself out. What's going on? There is that you put the pressure on yourself. It's like, I'm not coping.
Yeah.
What does that say about me? It tells me I'm weak and I'm pathetic and all those types of things. Well, actually, it's not the case. There's something that's not working properly that needs proper attention. And it may not be a tablet. It may be therapy or counselling or whatever it may be, PTSD therapy, EMDR, you name it. Whatever you need to help you get yourself back together again.
I think a lot of people find that because it's not a physical issue that someone else can necessarily see or that you can see yourself.
Yeah.
It's not taken as seriously as a physical injury would be.
Yeah.
If you said to someone, oh, I've broken a bone, they would never question that. They'd never tell you to just get over it and move on.
Exactly.
Just to use that part of your body.
Yeah.
It'd be let it rest, let it heal, look after it. Yeah. Whereas there isn't that sort of acceptance with mental health.
There isn't, and that's the dream scenario, isn't it? Is that it is treated with the same amount of respect. I think, like you say, if you've got something visible that somebody can see, nobody's going to put pressure on you. Well, get yourself back to work. What's wrong with you? Whereas if it's some kind of mental illness, then because it can't be seen, and because you don't show it a lot of the time, particularly when you're around people assume it's not that bad. So until it gets, and we're getting there, until it gets the same level of respect, I think, and people understand, all right, you're not very well, that's okay, we'll back off, go and get yourself well again. Like I say, we're moving in the right direction, but I think there's a long way to go yet, I think.
So what, in the time that you've been struggling with your mental health and you've been volunteering or in therapy, what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Well, I was best piece of advice. It sounds really obvious, but it's give yourself time, I think, and that's the difficult bit. That's what I found most difficult, because I wasn't working and money was really tight. You've got two things battling in your head at the same time. It's like, well, I need to go out. I need some money. I've got to pay my bills, but also, I got better once I literally shut down, once I stopped and thought, right, I can't even consider that at the moment until I put 100% of my attention into me, which is a counterintuitive thing to do because it makes you feel very selfish when you do that. But you have to accept that's what I've got to do, because I can't move forward until I get myself stable again and strong and some level of self-confidence and self-respect to be able to move forward. And like I said, I was lucky because I taught for a long time and I applied for voluntary redundancy, and it gave me a little bit of money to tide me over. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to get me through. So in that respect, I was in a fortunate position because I didn't have quite so much financial pressure. But I think that would be the biggest piece of advice I would give is you can't fix it overnight, and it takes some time. Go and seek the help that you need. Go and engage in it properly. Work hard at it, and it's not easy. But when you come out the other side, you're actually a much better, stronger person for it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really good message for people to hear.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, to admit that you can't cope and that you're not coping. And it is, like I say, it's very difficult to focus just on yourself, because it's not a natural thing. It feels like a very selfish thing to do. But you know, you've got to accept that you're not well if you're going through some kind of mental problem, mental difficulty, and you've got to take it seriously. Because if you don't, one thing I've learned is if you don't allow yourself to get, you know, as fully well, and if you go back into things too soon, which I have done in the past, it's very quick for things to go wrong again. So you've got to be fully ready and strong. And it's possible, it's perfectly possible, it's doable.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time when it's a particularly difficult period, it doesn't feel like it is possible for things to change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To get better.
Yeah.
And I think it's trying to remind yourself that it will get better and that difficult time will at least ease off a little bit.
Yeah.
So you feel able to do the work that you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I was 100% convinced when I was at my worst, 100%. Nobody could talk me out of it that I won't be working again, that I'm not fit to work, that I'll never be fit to work. And it wasn't a, you know, oh, I feel sorry for myself. It was a genuine, it was part of me. That's what I thought. It's what I felt like. Now I'm not fit to work, and I never will be. And I would have argued with anybody who said the opposite. But you know, you come out the other side, and it's like I say, it takes time. You do need to be kind to yourself and take time. I think that being kind to yourself is a big part of that. Don't beat yourself up. It's all right not to be all right.
Well, thank you for meeting with me today and doing this interview.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure. It's been nice to chat. Nice to kind of air a few things. And yeah, it's like I say, anybody who wants to volunteer, go out and do it. It's great.
It's been really nice hearing your input on things as well, and getting to know what other people have experienced.
Yeah. I think it's an important thing. Nobody's in anything alone. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people out there going through the same as you. You just often don't feel like that's the case, but it is.
Yeah.